This is my school and this is my learning zone. I'm Pranjal, a full-time high school student. In my free time, I find the opportunities to have conversations with professionals from various walks of life. Over time, I have learned that you have to be humble, work hard, and be a lifelong learner to be successful in life. I invite you to join me in one such journey. I hope you enjoy it. My guest today is a professional from the pharmaceutical industry. She has diverse experience from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. She has a degree in medicine and also an MBA, allowing her with strong domain knowledge combined with sharp business acumen. She has over 18 years of experience in people management and is currently working in a consulting boutique firm providing their services to the biopharmaceutical industry. Please welcome Dr. Shobhana Anand.
Thanks, Pranjal.
So, Dr. Aanand, let's start at the very beginning. Were you a good student in school?
Well, honestly, I know that that'll sound boring, but the fact is that I was always quite academically oriented. I just wanted to do well, so I used to actually enjoy studies. And in fact, I changed 11 schools because my father was in the armed forces. So I think that was quite a record. 11 schools across the country, and everywhere that I went, despite changing boards or changing teachers and the curriculum, I think I topped all my classes. So yes, I was usually always a good student.
So you mentioned you would change schools. How often would you change schools?
So if it's 11 schools in 12 years, then nearly every year. I think the maximum that I stayed in any school was 6 months, but I've also, sorry, was 2 years, but I've also done 6 month stints a couple of times.
So was it challenging making new friends since you would know that you would move on to a new school?
I actually don't remember it ever being challenging because I think I just got molded like that. And I think that's one of the biggest learnings for me personally because that has played an immense role also in making me the person that I am. I think when you have such frequent change in your early life, then it makes you very adaptable to different circumstances. And that adaptability, flexibility, comfort of dealing with different kind of people, all of that really helps in your personal as well as in your professional domain. So makes it very, very, it actually makes it easier later on in life to handle teams, handle peers, etc.
So you already mentioned that you were a very good student academically, but did you do anything apart from studying? Did you have any hobbies?
I did actually because I think while I was academically oriented somehow, it luckily it was in my genes. I was also I was a creative person always at heart. So we I come from a family where music and singing and dancing and playing instruments and all is quite usual. So I would participate very frequently in any competition which involved singing or dancing or I was always, in fact, very, very involved in that as well. The only thing that I think I would not be very involved in was sports. But apart from that, anything in the auditorium on the stage, I would be right there.
Did you play any instruments?
I did, but I did not ever find enough time to pursue anything because of the frequent change of schools and teachers. So I played the guitar, and I still play a little bit of guitar. Yeah.
So how would you rate your overall experience of school? Was it positive?
I really enjoyed school, and more than that, I enjoyed being able to experience such varied places, such varied people. And in India, as you may know, every part of India is like a different country. So it really gets you used to different cultures, cuisines, languages. There were times that I even learned a totally new language just for a year and then got into something else. So yes, I have thoroughly enjoyed school. I actually enjoyed school very much.
So from the beginning, you were a good academic student and you played the guitar and were musically talented as well. In all of this career aspirations and goal, did you already know what you wanted to become leaving high school?
Actually, I was somehow very focused on being a medical doctor. And I think the reason for that purely was that, honestly, the oldest reason, which I think nobody wants to believe, is that I really wanted to do something good. I had that strong inclination to, I thought that, being a doctor is one way to help people. And that's why, and despite the fact that actually my family was very keen that I pursue something on the creative side, because my parents knew how difficult it was to pursue the life of a doctor and how much it takes from you. They wanted me to, so at one point in time I was actually doing um, coaching, which we do in India to prepare for our careers. I was actually coaching for both medicine and coaching for fashion designing, and I thought I'll give it both a shot. But when I qualified in my medical school, then I just decided to take that up.
Becoming a doctor is widely considered one of the hardest professions in the world. So, did you ever have second doubts when you were pursuing to become a doctor?
Um, See, it was definitely, it was towards the end of the academic career. I mean, towards the end of my medical school stint, that I started realizing how difficult it is going to be for me to continue being a medical professional and doing what I wanted to do. You know, the situation with medical doctors in developing countries versus developed countries is quite different. So, doctors in India do not very quickly start making good salaries. There is nothing like placement. Getting a postgraduate seat is even more difficult. And towards the end of it, because I had no background, nobody from a medical background in my family, uh, no big money to start off a clinic or a hospital. So I actually started realizing that I am going to struggle as a professional initially. And when you are yourself struggling, it is very difficult for you to actually do follow any of your passions, even if that is a social cause, you know. So I therefore took the decision to do an MBA after I passed out. I worked for a couple of years, but I realized that uh, I don't necessarily have to pursue a medical degree to do social work, or to I first need to settle down myself, even financially. And I think that sort of decided why I want to do an MBA. So yes, I did have second doubts, and I mean, and then I did work. In fact, I actioned on it.
Right. So you realized this at the end of your high school education, but when you first came to university, was it a massive or drastic change from high school or in how you were learning in high school?
Oh yes, immensely, because it was huge. You cannot even begin to imagine, because in school, while you are at school, you're still with your parents. You live a very sheltered life, and of course, although I had many diverse experiences in school itself, but medical school was another uh, completely different world altogether. Especially a government medical school in India, you are exposed to the most gritty, the most raw, and the most trying circumstances, with very different, very poor infrastructure, if I may say, the lowest and the most poorest category of patients who cannot afford anything, and with very little in your power, you are actually working to do your best, to save lives. So it's a very emotionally trying circumstance for anyone who gets involved, who tends to get involved. So it was very different. Secondly, the pressure, the academic pressure in medical college was another level altogether. It was nothing like I had ever. School, I always seemed to do fantastically well, you know. But when I got to medical school, everyone who had come there was doing fantastically well in their schools, So suddenly I was just an average student compared to many other people who were brilliant. So I think, yeah, there were immense differences.
How did you deal this challenge of coming from being one of the best to transferring to an average student in a pool of good students?
I think it was the environment was so tough and so emotionally exacting that I don't think I was concentrating on anything other than just passing my exams. The information. I think it. I very quickly had to let go of wanting to be the best or wanting to top. I had to very quickly let go all of that, and it was perfectly fine because you as long as you're meeting your objective of becoming a doctor, at the end of the day it doesn't matter whether you are topping in a particular subject or not. So I think that did not trouble me at all. And in our first semester, one third of our class did not make it to the next semester. So it was very tough. I think about out of 150 people, I think nearly about 50, 60 people did not pass the exams, and they went back 6 months, and that used to be a massive setback to people. So I was just happy that I could manage to complete my degree in 5.5 years, regardless of whether I was topping or not topping. It didn't matter.
So with all this experience of harsh grade conditions, how would you rate your university days?
So my university days didn't stop there because I then went on to do my MBA, which was another experience altogether because, I was the only medical student in my MBA. And when I went in there, again, the people who were coming into B school were people who they were better equipped for it because, they were mostly engineers or they were people from commerce backgrounds. And I was the only completely differently educated person who came into MBA without even knowing what is an A4 sheet, or I did not even know how to send emails because you just study. You don't even look at a laptop or a computer. So that was another round of struggle for me. But I think I was always used to working very hard, which is what I did in MBA as well. And I did reasonably well there too. So I think university for me was all about really toughening yourself up because, both my colleges have been colleges where I've had to put in immense amount of hard work. And I think, and been facing very, very tough circumstances, pressures, a lot of pressures. So I think it just gets you ready for life ahead of you.
So with experience from two colleges and universities, which do you have any advice that you could give to students who are moving on to university?
Um, well, my advice to students would actually be, of course, learn to handle pressure as well, because we are not going to get away from this in life. Life is going to get more, it's going to get tougher. There's going to be, your careers will be tough, your work life balance will be tough. So university is like prep school for life. It's not just preparing you for a career. And one has to be willing to accept everything with open arms, and yet also keep reminding yourself that however much the pressure may be, you should have your people and your family and your support system, and you should be able to open up with them and keep seeking guidance. Never let it bring you down. That's all.
That's amazing advice. Going back to what you said earlier, pursuing an MBA at a university, people say that becoming a doctor is difficult. Now I understand that MBA comes with its own challenges, but would you say that the MBA was relatively easier than becoming a doctor?
Yes, definitely. Medical school academically is it's unparalleled. It's definitely, I mean, there've been, let me tell you, for example, you may find it difficult to believe, but in our final year exams, or even if in any of our prof exams, which used to be every 1.5 years professional exams, we would not sleep for, at least I would not sleep for 5 days on the trot. Wow. 5 nights on the trot, and the max I would sleep is like half an hour or 45 minutes every day. So by the end of it, you were like zombies, but there was too much stress. So yes, medical was definitely tougher.
So after you conquer medical school, you get a job at MCure Pharmaceuticals. How did you get this job?
That was a campus placement. And I was, when I did my MBA somehow, and I don't know really what prompted that decision, but I was quite clear that I want to at least stay connected with pharma, with pharmaceuticals, so that I have some benefit of my medical education. And clearly, these fields definitely are quite, intermingling, and they are well connected. So I think when MCure came on campus, I applied, and since I was the only doctor on campus, so everybody expected that I will be placed.
So from a young age, every kid sees their parents work and they have an ideal expectation of what the job, when they get a job, how it look like. Did MCure meet all your expectations as a job?
Honestly, I had no background in this kind of work or area because my parents came from, the armed force. My father was in the armed forces, and I actually did not know anyone closely who had a corporate career. So I did not know what a typical corporate job could be like, Pranjal. And I had no specific expectations in there, excepting that I wanted to do well, I wanted to grow, I wanted to grow financially, I wanted to grow in terms of my responsibility areas. Um, so I went with zero expectations.
Right. So how would you describe the job? What did you do?
It was my first job, and so I think I just went with what I got. I was lucky that the immediate team I had and my bosses were very good people, and I got some great on ground experience. So it was a marketing role, and it was my first marketing role in India. For the first and only, in fact, initial role for India market, because after that I mostly worked in international markets, and my I happened my first brand launch in fact was an iron brand, which is prescribed in India for pregnant women, and that brand went on to become the blockbuster. Today it is the leading brand in the industry. It's a huge, I was 60-70 million dollar kind of brand. So so it was great learning, but I think I was, by the second year, I knew that I wanted to leave, not continue there, because there was a very different culture at play, especially in the senior management, which was not very conducive. And I think I made a very good decision when I decided to leave MCure, because after 2 years, I was sure that I wanted to work in an environment which was more positive.
So you come into MCure with no expectations of a job, do really well and launch a blockbuster product, and then you see a bigger opportunity and then you leave MCure to your next company. So how did you know you wanted to work at this company, or how did you get the opportunity?
So, so the opportunity, after a while, you only get opportunities through networking,
Mm,
Pranjal. So, one of the most important things that anybody needs to follow if they want to have a successful career is keeping their networks active. So, I think that is something that I'm good at. It comes from my personal upbringing as well, where I have always had, the ease of interacting with people. So, the same thing has really helped in the corporate setup. So once you are out there, you cannot, whatever field you may be in, whether you're in marketing or finance or HR or whatever, one must keep their networks alive,
right.
and one must keep the networks very positive also. I mean, it's not a one way relationship ever.
Mm,
So I think people will only help you if they like you.
yeah.
So you need to be genuinely someone whom people can feel at ease with. And my opportunity at my next company, which was Glenmark, also came through my own network. So when I reached out and people started offering me possibilities.
So when you came to this job, now you already have an expectation of what a job would be like from your experience at MCure. Did this job feel like it was better and it provided more?
Yes, so Glenmark, actually, I spent a very long time. I spent more than 9 years there, and it was definitely the company that shaped my professional career. My professional personality as well as my career entirely, end to end. I did multiple roles there, and I grew from first a manager to a senior manager to a deputy general manager, then a general manager, in hierarchy. In between, I was stationed outside of India. Um, and I did multiple kind of roles. So I that is where I first was, of course, the executive assistant to the MD, and then I went on to move into strategy roles. So my business development and strategy roles were across different markets. So definitely, this company gave me massive platform in terms of both exposure, in terms of financial growth, and in terms of the hierarchy also.
When you came to this company, did you have a goal of climbing the corporate ladder, or did it just happen?
It just happened, honestly. I did not come with any set goals. And I think while it is important to know directionally what you want to do, but I think this entire concept of, having very specific goals and very specific timelines is a little overrated, because the fact is that one does not know as you evolve as a professional, you do not know what is it that you will start enjoying, what is it that you will really dislike, what kind of jobs is it that you may want to experiment with. So I think the prime importance, if I would say, is of giving whatever you are doing, giving it your best, and then allowing yourself to understand that where is it that you fit. So I think for me, it just happened. I kept doing well and I kept growing.
So after 9 years, you decide to leave the company and move on to Pfizer. So I assume that you got the job at Pfizer through networking again, right?
Yes, absolutely. Networking, as in, once you have your contacts, so you want to look for a job, you sort of reach out to different people. And yeah, in between, actually, in fact, in Glenmark, I think one of the most interesting things that I had done, by the way, was, I had moved out of country with a 9 month, no, with a 6 month old baby on my own. So, these are some very tough decisions that I had made at that time to further my career. But it all helped because I became recognized as a good, a very strong professional, and somebody who's like also strong personally to be able to manage something like that. So, Pfizer also, before that, I also was in Lupin for a while. And Pfizer was because after all these years of working in international markets, I had then finally, my husband and I decided that, instead of continuing to stay in different countries and different cities, we will try and now anchor back our lives to, one place. And I decided that I'm going to start working out of India and based in India, and focus on India. So that's when I decided to take the Pfizer role for India after a very long time. That's what prompted my decision.
Right. After living so many years outside of India, what prompted you to be based in India rather than somewhere else?
Family, especially my parents, my extended family, they're all very important to me. And see, after a certain point, you've had so much of exposure, you've done you've done reasonably well financially, so you decide whether you want to, you know continue to, these are very personal choices. In our case, it was purely because my brother is also out of the country, and I wanted to be able to be close to my parents. So we decided that we will now make Mumbai our anchor location.
So coming to Pfizer, Pfizer is a very big corporate industry. So when you came to Pfizer, were things different or were you used to the systems?
Very, very different. Very different. So I think in Glenmark, this was an Indian multinational, also very big operations, and my own personal responsibility area was very huge. So, for example, I was covering all of the emerging markets, which was more than 40 markets, 40 countries. Yeah. So, what happens in Indian companies is, or rather smaller companies, not Indian companies, I would say, and Glenmark was around $2 billion around that time. So, and you are there, your learning curve is huge, because the exposure you get to so much happening around you is tremendous, and you're doing a little bit in every place, and and things move at a rapid breakneck speed. When you're in a Pfizer, which is a 55 billion kind of, at that time it was about a $55 billion kind of company, and then you are working, in India market, you then suddenly you're focused on one market. You are, instead of going wide, you're going deep. So a very small business case also you will take a month to finish, versus in Glenmark where you would have finished 3 deals in 1 month. So there is a very big difference in the way of functioning, and both of them give you immense learning.
So coming into Pfizer with these completely different systems, how did you deal with these challenges of starting to learn?
I would not lie, but it took me quite a while. It took me about at least a year to get accustomed to their way of working, and to the way of dealing with people. There is a very different set of people who work in these companies vis-a-vis the Indian multinationals. Um, so you face a lot of challenges initially. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. Uh, but I think the most important learning always is in any, after, especially after so many years, whenever you are in a very tough situation, you have to allow yourself to, you have to give yourself a little time, and then you have to tell yourself that it will pass. If it's not big enough for you to leave the job, and if there are constant niggles which are frustrating you, it will pass. Tomorrow will be a better day, and you'll find a way to sort it out. So that's how you deal with these situations. My role changes. Yes, yes, yes. That was more of the company's decision than mine. I was in Pfizer also handling portfolio strategy and business development when I was taken in. But what happens in multinationals is many a times there are things which are out of your control, because decisions are taken globally for something which impacts hundreds of thousands of people across. So my move to director marketing was actually an outcome of that decision. Um, there was a reorganization which happened, and then they needed me to move into a director marketing role, and I moved into that role from director commercial. So that's how I ended up going into marketing again after so many years. MCure was my marketing experience, and then Pfizer in the end was my marketing experience.
So getting a big position like director of marketing at a multi-billion-dollar company, did you finally feel like you made it? All your education and hard work has been finally paid off?
Quite to the contrary. I think it made me decide that I want to leave the typical corporate setup and start with something which gives me a little flexibility of my own, and the ability to do professionally very well, but along with following passions that I want to follow. So the director marketing role was not my choice, Pranjal. I was even at a director level before that role. So I think I felt that I had made it a long time ago, maybe somewhere in Glenmark, because I think professionally I had peaked in Glenmark already. And then when I was in Pfizer, I think the next level would have been country manager kind of roles, which were under discussion for some corporations. But frankly, I think the idea of continuing to grow in a typical corporate setup became less and less exciting to me, because I started realizing how much time I'm putting into work, which sometimes does not have any returns at all for the company, also for personally me, also. So, but these are things that you cannot always get away from in a large corporation, and that is perfectly fine. But the fact that I had other passions which I really wanted to pursue led me to join this consulting firm, which as a partner now I feel that I am professionally well settled. I have, in fact, I'm probably working at least twice as hard in terms of the kind of work that I'm doing, the number of, the amount of effort that I'm personally putting into it. but at the same time also allowing me the flexibility and the peace of mind to pursue passions which were very close to my heart.
Yes. This brings me to my next question. With all this pressure and hard work at your job, how did you find balance in your life?
I think the last couple of roles that I have, honestly, there was very little balance till the time I was still really continuing to grow very fast. Of course, I have a extremely supportive family, absolutely supportive. So whenever I wanted to move internationally, I only had positive support, whether from my husband or from my extended family, my parents, my in-laws. Everybody was more than happy to allow me to continue to grow as a professional. I We planned our child at a very specific time so that I could manage that well. So I think we were planning everything around my career growth, and so but there was not very much of balance. It was all focused more towards work and doing well and achieving more. But as my child is growing older, I think that is where I realized that as they become more emotionally mature, that is when they need you more. And it does not mean that you need to do any lesser in your career. It only means that you need to work in an environment which is more supportive of your time needs. So if you have the flexibility to manage your time, then balance is not a problem. So that is what I was seeking, and I think now I have achieved that.
So you leave Pfizer to join a boutique consulting company. Um, are you happy at the boutique consulting company now?
I've never been happier, I think, because it's a company which was started by an ex-colleague of mine who was in Glenmark, and this is purely focused on technical services in the pharma industry. And I have been here for nearly 3 years now. It allows me great quality work, allows me to be the boss of my own time and my own schedule, and also you sort of avoid some amount of politics or unnecessary pressure that large corporations bring along with them. So this really gives me the ability, and like I said, the peace of mind to follow other passions.
So being an ex-Pfizer employee, during these 2 years of the pandemic, everybody has closed eyes on these big pharmaceutical companies. So what are your opinions on the new mRNA technology vaccines that Pfizer has just put out?
I think, see, Pfizer, for all the, I don't know how much you know about the company per se, but in the West, somehow big pharma is vilified and, very often talked about in very negative terms because of so-called profiteering and things like that. But the fact is that this is exactly what they are good at. They are good at innovation, and Pfizer knows what it's good at. They are fantastic at innovation. What Pfizer, AstraZeneca have managed to do, to make world class, cutting edge technology vaccines in this short a time span with, such strong and high efficacy levels, such large scale trials. I think it is phenomenal effort, because usually it would have taken about 10 years to take a product from ideation to the market, and they've done all of that in about a year's time. So it makes me proud to be an ex Pfizerite at this part of point at this point in time.
So now I'll move on to the conclusion. In all your time, do you still keep up with your hobbies that you started earlier?
So, I mean, I think during maybe the early stages of my career, and even till about a few years ago, maybe I didn't have time to pursue other stuff to a very large extent, because, home, work, family takes away a lot of time. And I like to meet people. I have a lot of friends. So I like to keep socializing. So those were the only things I could sort of manage, of course, apart from listening to some music or reading up. But my husband and I love the outdoors. So last few years, we have been really, really taking our time to build our other, lives in parallel. We have a small farm, so we are into farming, and we are also I also involved on some large scale forest projects, afforestation. So there's something called as a Miyawaki technique. I don't know if you're aware of that, which is fast growing forests in urban spaces. And we are involved. I am personally involved in quite a few Miyawaki forest projects in the country now.
That's truly fascinating. And
I hope there is a little bit of impact somewhere.
with all your experience in working in big pharmaceutical industries, becoming a doctor, do you have any advice for students going into your field or trying to make a career into your field?
Actually, I don't have any specific advice from a career perspective. My only advice would be that I think this younger generation expects instant gratification. They get, very quickly impatient with everything. And that doesn't really help, because you've got to give things time. It's okay. I mean, there is no race at all. The only thing that you've got to do is put your head down and give it your best. Whatever you're doing, whatever you choose to do, give it your best. Evaluate. You see what it feels like. And maybe after a year, you'll realize that no, I was never cut out for marketing. I think I should be in HR because I enjoy interacting with people. And you may change your career, goal midway. So the only advice I have is, you know, be patient, be sincere, and give it your best. And don't let pressures bring you down. Just always remember that, career is just one part of life, it is not life itself.
I definitely can relate to the instant gratification part. Just sometimes the patient wears thin. Um,
Absolutely.
if you had a time machine and you could visit any moment in your life, you could relive it, which moment would you relive?
Now, I just want to prolong the now, because I would just like hold my life at this point in time and expand it as much as I could, because I think this is the best time of my life. And I think if you can continue to feel like that about every phase of your life, then we are very blessed, because I think I've got everything that I want.
I ask this question to every guest. How much of your success would you attribute to hard work, and how much of it would you attribute to luck?
I think definitely in my case, I would attribute maybe I usually, if for the general public, I would say it should be 80-20, because I believe that, you've got to really work hard and then luck. But in my case, I also had some good opportunities along the way. So maybe 70-30. Because if you don't prove yourself in an opportunity by working really hard, then you don't get the next opportunity.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time. I truly learned a lot about the pharmaceutical industry and the challenges you overcame, and I hope we can talk again someday.
Sure, Pranjal. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.